It was 0223 hours. The Black Sea was silent until 3 Ukrainian FPV-1 drones tore through the darkness at over 180 kilometers per hour, skimming the waves like shadows with engines barely whispering against the wind. Their target? A Russian intelligence ship stationed 15 miles off Novorossiysk, an electronic predator that had been strangling Ukraine's naval drone operations for weeks. On that night, its R-381T arrays were listening, as always, tracking signals, decoding transmissions, mapping every launch Ukraine made. For 6 relentless weeks, it had been building a deadly pattern, one that would soon predict and destroy entire swarms before they even reached open water. The mission seemed routine, but in a few minutes, everything would change. Unseen to the Russian operators, 3 drones flew just 3 meters above the sea, their plywood frames reflecting almost nothing to radar. Tiny ghosts slipping through a digital fog. To the Russian systems tuned for metal and aluminum aircraft, they were invisible. 20 minutes after launch, a Russian Forpost-R reconnaissance drone appeared on the horizon, sweeping the sky with its Canadian-built MX-15DI camera. It could spot a basketball 5 kilometers away, detect a temperature change of 2 degrees, but it didn't matter. When its operator zoomed in on faint heat traces, the Ukrainian drones had already dropped to 2 meters above the water, lost inside the radar's ground clutter, that chaotic mess of reflections from waves and spray. Within minutes, their wooden frames cooled to the same temperature as the sea itself. The operator marked the sighting as possible birds and turned away. Behind them, the reason for their desperate launch became clear. Russian Shahed drones had already found their origin point, striking moments after the FPV-1s had escaped. The operators barely survived as 50-kilogram warheads shredded their makeshift control station into molten debris. The Russians had intelligence, but not fast enough. By 0330, 20 more Ukrainian naval drones surged from the coast, heading towards Sevastopol. But these weren't real attackers. They were bait. A decoy swarm made of modified jet skis and cheap commercial boats equipped with transmitters and heat sources. To Russian radar, they were indistinguishable from the real thing. 20 deadly silhouettes racing toward their shores. From their screens in Novorossiysk, Russian operators saw what looked like the largest Ukrainian naval assault since 2022. Panic spread through the command chain. 6 Ka-27 helicopters scrambled from base, Russia's primary defense against naval drones. Their rotors thundered over the coast as they rushed west to intercept. But it was all a trick. Every minute those helicopters chased shadows, the real drones flew east, straight toward their target. Within an hour, all 6 were 360 kilometers out of position. The spy ship, now completely exposed, had no air cover, no backup, no one left to protect it. The 3 real FPV-1 drones adjusted course 15 degrees north, slipping into a narrow radar corridor Ukraine had studied for months. 2 Podlet K1 radar stations rotated like twin searchlights, leaving a 4-second blind spot every minute. It was barely enough, but enough. The first drone entered at 0447, 4 seconds invisible, 2 seconds exposed. 4 seconds invisible again. A flicker on the Russian radar screen, a possible bird. The operator dismissed it. The second drone followed, precise and unseen. The third wasn't as lucky. A flaw in its gyroscope pulled it off course. Russian radar painted it clearly. A single faint contact, bearing 270, altitude 50 meters. Still, the operator ignored it, more focused on the massive false swarm over Sevastopol. That decision would cost them everything. By dawn, fog began to form across the water, thick and pale. Visibility dropped to 500 meters. At 0500, the decoy fleet reached its final act, boats scattering, crashing, circling until their fuel ran out. The Russian helicopters, realizing too late, were stranded far out to sea with half their fuel gone. The real attack pressed forward. At 600, the first FPV-1's GPS began drifting east. Russia's electronic warfare systems in Crimea, R-330 Zhitel, had come online, broadcasting fake GPS signals powerful enough to drown out satellites. The drone's instruments thought reality itself had shifted. It was being pulled toward a Russian Panzer battery. But Ukrainian engineers had prepared for this. Along the Black Sea, abandoned oil platforms served as visual checkpoints. The drone's cameras, crude but reliable, recognized the shapes and corrected course manually, using nothing but sight. Sometimes the oldest tools beat the newest technology. Not all survived. One drone lost its GPS completely, its Chinese-made capacitor burning out under temperature stress. It drifted off course, flying into the void until it disappeared without a trace. 2 remained. At 0723, the Russian spy ship's Mineral ME radar went active, sweeping the horizon. Its signals team began triangulating frequencies, searching for the faint harmonics all electronics give off. They found one, bearing 285, moving at 180 kilometers per hour. The radar locked briefly, then lost it. The wooden drone's inconsistent reflections made the system stumble. The lead FPV-1 switched to stealth mode, cutting all non-essential electronics, flying blind by compass alone. The Russian ship's own electronic warfare systems were jamming across every band, blinding their own radar, a phenomenon their manuals called electromagnetic fratricide. They were deafening themselves. At 0725, a patrol boat was ordered to investigate. Its crew manned the deck gun, eyes straining through the fog. They had trained for aluminum drones, hot and metallic, not plywood ghosts gliding 3 meters above the waves. 3 minutes of fuel left. At 0730, the lead drone reached visual range. The Russian ship was exactly where expected, 15 miles off Novorossiysk, surrounded by patrols, trusting physics to protect them. But nature had betrayed them. A temperature inversion over the sea bent radar beams upward. Everything below 30 meters became invisible. To the radar, the water was empty. The patrol boat spotted the drone at 500 meters. Muzzle flashes erupted. Tracers cut the mist. 3 rounds punched through its thin frame, one striking the propeller. The engine screamed but held. 90 seconds of fuel. At 0733, the drone sighted the spy ship's mast. 800 meters. The engine mount cracked. It began to wobble. Russian officers shouted on the bridge, "Drone inbound!" They looked south, where the damaged drone struggled toward them. They should have looked north. Through the fog, the third FPV-1 appeared. Silent, unseen, on perfect trajectory. 10 meters above the water. At 0734, it surged forward at 180 kilometers per hour. The ship's radar couldn't depress below 5 degrees, never designed for something attacking from beneath the horizon. The lookout's cry came too late. The drone slammed into the ship's mast, where its antennas and sensors converged. A flash of white light, a roar that split the dawn. The explosion gutted the bridge in an instant, vaporizing the R-381T arrays, twisting the Mineral ME radar into melted steel. Secondary fires tore through the ship's power grid. For 18 hours, it burned. When the flames died, the ship that once heard every whisper in the Black Sea was deaf, blind, and broken. 6 weeks of intelligence gone. The network that once predicted every Ukrainian move erased. And within hours, new Ukrainian drones lifted off from secret coastal points, flying with new routes, new timings, invisible once again. Russia could still bomb the sea, but now it was bombing ghosts. This is military secret zone, where the war is fought not just with bullets, but with shadows and silence.